Hi, my name is Edyta Kowal, and this is Filmteractive Festival, fully online this time. And today we are talking about storytelling and virtual reality, supporting this storytelling with a little bit of art. And our special guest today is Celine Tricart, a true master in this discipline. How are you?
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for having me and for the invitation. I'm always very pleased to share my experience and my work.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. Please let me introduce you more properly, because you are producer, director, storyteller, and virtual reality expert. And I'm sure that you are going to share with us a lot of practical tips. And you have been working in virtual reality longer than most. But I would like to start this conversation from something a little bit different, from your story, since you are a storyteller. And don't worry, I don't mean here, the story of your life, but long story short version of it. How it happened that you are here and you are a director, you own your company, Lucid Dreams Productions. What was your path that led you here?
Well, that was a long and weird path, I would say. So first of all, I fell in love with storytelling as a little girl, where I was reading a lot. I was just spending all my free time reading books, and at night I would be hiding under the blanket with a flashlight, try to read. And my parents were always yelling at me of like, stop reading, come have lunch. And I'd be like, yeah, let me just finish my page, and I would still be reading like an hour later. So yeah, it started with books. And growing up, I wanted to become a writer. And then it's only much later in life that I actually discovered cinema. So I was watching a lot of TV. I was addicted to TV. But we were living in the countryside. So the first time I went to see a movie in a theater, I was 15 years old or something. So very late in life. And that became a big passion, like a new passion in life. So suddenly I wanted to be a film director. But at the same time, I'm passionate with science, and I always had kind of like an engineer mindset. I was good in math and physics and biology in school. And so when time came to choose my career at the end of high school, I discovered that I could work in my passion, storytelling, but still have kind of a scientific aspect to my work through, learning technical knowledge for film, which I did. So I went to college, and then I went to a film school in France called Louis Lumière, which trains mostly technicians. Director of photography, engineers in cinema, also directors. And very early, actually it was at the end of film school that I discovered Stereoscopic 3D. So the technology that allows you to film movies in 3D and see movies in 3D with glasses. And I was like amazed. I was like, this is perfect, because yes, it's a technology, it's a new technology. But it also serves storytelling. And it's not just tech for tech. It's also, if it used well, it becomes a new language that you can use to tell stories as a director in a new and meaningful way. So that's when I decided to specialize at the end of film school into Stereoscopic 3D. And that kind of like one thing led to another. After a few years working in that field, we knew about VR, that VR was coming, that it was going to be the next frontier. And in 2014, I think that's when the first time I tried a VR headset, actually a bit before that. And I was like, all right, this is it. This is the new thing. This is the new language. I cannot imagine the potential of this technology for storytelling. And so I very early on jumped in the bandwagon of VR and started experimenting with it, like trying to figure out how we can tell stories in a new way using VR.
Well, I envy you, because you are successful in all those fields. You started from the book, because you didn't mention about that, but you wrote your own book. Then you were passionate about filmmaking, and now you are doing it.
It's true that I wrote 2 books, but those are technical books.
The first one 11.
Yeah, it's like one about 3D storytelling and one about VR filmmaking. But when I was little, I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to write adventure books, and so that I didn't get to do this. Maybe one day, who knows? I'll get to that.
Maybe. When we were talking a little bit earlier before this interview, you mentioned about woman empowerment and how it is important in the whole path of the career, especially in this film industry, creative sectors industry. And I'm wondering, what is your experience and how such strong woman like you and successful one can change this situation?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say that you're not born a strong woman. I became one, and I became one through different things. First of all, I started martial arts as a teenager. I watched The Matrix, and it became my favorite movie, and I wanted to learn Kung Fu. And so I started martial arts, and that was a huge thing in my life that changed me into the woman I am today. And other things like role-playing games. I'm a super nerd, super geek. I love games, and I love role-playing games. And playing role-playing games also helped me get better at public speaking, for example, or just finding my voice and not being afraid of presenting myself a certain way. And so all those little things in my life transformed me from, I swear to God, a very shy little girl into the woman I am today. So the point is, it's possible for everyone at any age, really. It's not something that you're born that way. And so to go back to your question, yes, I did not realize that until very recently, actually, that the system so I'm born and raised in France, and I moved to the United States of America 7 years ago. And so I have experience in 2 very different countries, one European country and the US. And in both countries, I realized recently that even though it might not be super obvious, the system is definitely not rigged for women to become successful, especially in the field of new technologies or anything science related. And as I was digging into virtual reality and started creating content in VR, it was actually something beautiful happened in the US. In the early days of VR, women were immediately very, very present. There was this group called Women in VR that started, I remember our first meeting years ago, it was like 11 of us, and now it grew into a Facebook group of, I don't know, 10,000 members. I have to check, but it really grew, and it became an important voice in the industry, all those super talented women. And then I started realizing that the same thing had happened before in the video game industry. In the early days of video game, there were actually a lot of women involved. And then when it became the huge industry as we know it today, lots of women were bullied out or pushed out of position of power and kind of like disappear from the food chain. And so that is something that we don't want to happen in VR. And I think so far it's been a great space for women, and it's been a great space for other minorities as well to express their voice and their artistry. And now we just have to be really, really careful in keeping it that way, so that what happened in video game doesn't happen in VR, when VR will become that mainstream industry that we hope it will become, that women will stay and still have the opportunity to tell their stories. So we have to be very careful like I'm always very careful when I'm starting a new project and I hire my team. We try to keep the team as diverse as we can, and because in my experience, it's not out of generosity of mind or something, but in my experience, when you have a diverse team of at least 50-50 men and women, and also LGBT community and all different minorities, somehow the project is always better. It's just like all those voices coming together and bringing their own personal stories and their own personal perspective really enhance the
are
quality.
much more productive, yes, so because of those differences.
It's just people from different backgrounds. It just works really well, and I've never been on film set that were as efficient as when there is tons of different people working together and not just the same kind of people. So yeah, that is something that I'm very vocal about, and I'm a huge supporter of is women and minorities in the VR space.
Is there any strong woman in your career that helped you, during your development, that supported you, and right now you are thinking about her as, I don't know, a mentor or really, really important one in your career path?
Well, here's an interesting thing, though, is actually most of my mentors in my career are men. All the people that really helped me, got my first job, helped me get my visa in the United States, gave me my first job in the United States, like all the people who really like helped me and were my mentors were men until very recently. In the past, I would say 2 and 3 years, I started having women mentors as well. But that says a lot about how it's on us women to become mentors of other women. Like we are not used to this. It's so hard sometimes to get to those positions of power that you want to protect your position at all costs, and we don't have that like bro attitude within women. We are very competitive against each other, and so we have to like flip the script on that. We have to become better at helping each other, and that's also something that I'm trying. I don't think I'm at that level yet, but I'm trying to do everything I can to mentor younger women, less experienced women in the industry, because if we keep helping each other, just the industry as a whole will get better. I don't think anybody's going to steal my job. And if a woman, gets successful in that field, it's going to be good for all of us. So.
Yeah, I agree. But definitely you have such a big experience that you can share your, wisdom and your knowledge and your experience with other people, with other women. And you are definitely successful one because your work, your films are showcased in many big film festivals, Sundance Festival, Venice Film Festival, Tribeca, I have notes here, HotDocs, and many, many others. And I'm wondering, because you mentioned before about the science and different fields that you are, passionate about, and how are you right now combining all them together, especially technology, science, and storytelling? Is it difficult, or don't tell me that you are natural born storyteller?
Can
you learn how to do it, or you have to feel it inside?
No, absolutely. So, that's always the same question of like, are you born an artist or do you become one? I don't think I was born an artist. I was just the number one audience for artists. I just love reading books. Like I said, I love watching TV series. I love watching movies. And it was, it was actually when I first, for example, I met one of my best friends in college, and he's a terrific artist, fine art artist. And just being friend with him and being in contact of his work for so many years, like kind of transformed me into seeing things a different way. And then, for example, I'm working on my very first video game project. I've been a gamer my whole life, but I never had the courage of saying, hey, maybe I can do my own video game. And it really took years and years of thinking about it and meeting different people and trying to say, hey, do you want to help me on this video game? And people were like, no, you can do it. You've got everything you need. And it took years for me to realize that, yeah, actually, maybe, you know what, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can do it myself. And we'll see what happens. But I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel that I had the knowledge and the skills to do a video game until somebody convinced me that I could. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it doesn't matter that I've been to Sundance and Venice and Tribeca. I still felt like I wasn't, I didn't have what it takes to do something a little bit different. So I think it really comes from, yes, talent, but also opportunities, but more importantly, it's like believing in yourself. And that can take years. I don't think there is a shortcut. I don't think I could have gotten faster to this point. It literally took years.
Process, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound very helpful because people would be like, oh, okay, so I guess I just have to wait. But it's just like by doing a lot of different things that you kind of like refine your art and you find your voice. I don't think I fully find my voice yet, but I'm getting there. I think I kind of understand the kind of stories I want to tell. I understand the way I like to tell them. Because looking back at my work, I analyze my own work and I was like, oh, there is a pattern here. There's like this and this and this. I seems to do well and seems to be resonating with people. So maybe this is my art. Maybe this is my voice. But I'm still in the process of figuring that out.
Okay. I'm wondering where it's going, where you will be, you know, in the nearest future. But I really love your work and the way you are telling those stories, because I think from my side point of view, there is some kind of poetry in it, because when I'm thinking about virtual reality films, I feel that most of them are overloaded with tech, you know, and very little of them have something, you know, connected with art. And your work definitely is something like this. And there is a lot of metaphor, a lot of emotions, but there is also user audience experience. And I'm wondering what is the most important for you as a storyteller? What is the priority here?
Yeah, I guess there's different priorities depending on the medium. If it was for like cinema, and I mean, in general, it would be the emotion, so the emotional connection with the story. And I think my art is geared more towards understanding and creating emotion in my audiences. When it comes to virtual reality, it's really like I do a lot of work. I put a lot of effort into trying to put myself in my audience's shoes. So I try to imagine, all right, I'm standing right here. I put a VR headset on my face. It's heavy. It's hot. It makes me sweat. It makes me a bit dizzy. Okay, and now what? The experience starts. What do I see? What do I think is happening to me? Am I in danger? Do I participate in that story? And I really try to understand things from their perspective so that I can fine-tune the experience and making it not what I think they want or what I think they experience, but really what they feel. So it's more about really writing your story from a first-person perspective.
Yeah, you call it participation. It's something like this, yeah?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. People in VR call them the participant. Even if it's a passive experience, cinematic, where you just look around, you still kind of like, because you decide where to look, you are in a way participating. It doesn't mean that you have agency in the experience, but it's just like, don't try to force the audience into your position of a storyteller, but force yourself as a storyteller to be the audience and understand how they feel. And then that allows you to, for example, I do a lot of prototyping, right? When we create a new experience, what we did for The Key, for example, my latest VR work.
Oh, hello. I wasn't expecting you. I don't usually have many visitors. My name is Anna. I'm having trouble remembering my past, but I keep having dreams about it. And in every one of them, there's this mysterious key. I want to remember where the key comes from. and what it means. Can you help me?
The Key, it's an interactive room-scale virtual reality experience. It's a journey where you get to meet a young woman named Anna. Anna doesn't remember her past, but she thinks that there are clues in her dreams that will help her remember her past. And specifically, there is a key. So we go on a journey looking for what the key is and what it opens.
You made it. You're in. This is the house in the clouds.
Early on, as when I had a script ready, I had a friend coming. I put a VR headset on her that was shut down, so it was completely black. And I would just like ask her to stand up, and I would like play some music, and I would describe what she sees and what she hears, and I would see how she reacts, and she would tell me, "All right, I'm going to that box over there. I'm gonna try to open it." And then I would like role play as like, okay, so when you open it, this is what happens. And so by doing this very, very early in the process, before even starting a game engine and starting coding everything, just trying to understand how the participant would react and feel with the experience, and then you can rewrite the script and fine-tune the script. So there's lots and lots of things you can do before even touching a computer or, you know, trying to craft the experience.
But you knew from the beginning that you gonna to combine, you know, immersive theater, animation, and VR in this specific case, the key, because it's really interesting and it's totally different perspective on refugee issue, and it's really dull-minded, you know, at the end of it.
Yeah, so that idea of building a metaphor and only revealing giving the key, literally, of the metaphor at the end of the experience, that's something that actually was the very first idea we had. So the way the process worked for the key, so this is an Oculus VR for Good project. What does that mean is that Oculus selected filmmakers, and they paired us with nonprofits, and we were tasked with the idea of making an experience for that nonprofit. So I was paired with a nonprofit called Friends of Refugee, based in Atlanta in the US, and they are welcoming and helping refugees when they arrive in the United States. And there has been a lot of VR experience about the refugee crisis, and I just did not want to do another one.
Story.
Yeah, I didn't want to just like put a 360 camera in a refugee camp and you know, try really hard to make people cry. Instead, I was like, well, let's really use the poetic and emotional potential of this medium to try to bring people to that emotion that we want, but in a whole different way. Because we've seen so many of those projects, and we've seen so many news stories or documentaries about refugees that we've just surrounded ourselves with emotional firewalls. You know, it's not that we don't care, it's just that we don't let ourselves be touched by those stories anymore. Otherwise we'll be traumatized every day we switch on TV, right? And so the goal was to build an experience that would kind of bypass that emotional wall using storytelling, which is what stories are great for, right? You know, there's lots of studies that shows that people are more easily convinced by a good story than by scientific facts. So using storytelling to get to this emotional journey, only to reveal at the end that you've been exploring the journey and the feelings of a refugee running from home into a safe haven.
Yeah,
and
what
so,
I like.
Yeah.
Sorry for interruption.
No, go ahead.
Okay. What I like in this project is that you mentioned before, you didn't force those people, the audience, to cry about this problem, but you forced them to think and then maybe act. So this is why it's better for me than all those projects we could see before that. And even if it's, the story and the end of it is quite surprising. We are not going to spoil it right now, because I want to encourage people to see that film by their own. But it's really interesting work. And there is another project, the Sun Ladies. You collaborated in this project with the journalist, the conflict journalist, and it's really interesting thing for me, because it seems that you like this kind of multidisciplinary collaboration in your project. You are not afraid of testing many people and inviting them into your project. Why do you think that other creatives are afraid of it and they are not trying to this? Why to co-create now? Because I know that you are a great fan of co-creation, but I want to share your perspective with our audience today.
Yeah, so there's actually been a lot of super interesting research on co-creation, and the idea that the model of the single author that we worship is kind of a model that doesn't really apply into those new forms of storytelling. And when you think of like video games, for example, which is really becoming a super interesting medium. It's really, we are in the golden age of video games, and most of my most emotional and fascinating stories that I've lived through the past few years were through video games, not movies. And so what we see in the way we create video games and in the way we create XR experiences, is often different storytellers, different perspectives coming together. So I always find it interesting. It doesn't always work because, of course, and actually MIT did a study on co-creation and had published those guidelines on how to make co-creation work, because it can very quickly become, actually I worked on projects that were co-creation that didn't work, that the project never finished because the co-creation didn't click. But when it does, it's amazing. So Sun Ladies, it's a documentary, a 360-degree documentary about a Yazidi woman in Iraq fighting against ISIS. So I came on board originally just as a director of photography, and I went to Iraq with two war journalists, so Christian Stephan from the UK and Dylan Roberts from the United States, and the three of us filmed that documentary. And working with Christian as my co-director really enhanced. It's just like he was bringing a whole perspective of things that I knew nothing about. Well, I could also focus on, as the woman of the team, really connecting with this group of women and bring my own sensitivity to it, kind of like woman approach to it. And I think this worked really, really well. Yeah. And for the key was hearing the stories of sons of friends of refugees. And going to visit them. And when I was there in Atlanta, they did a little training for me and Gloria, my co-producer on the project. It's called a loss simulation. It's kind of a training. You use sticky notes that they do to every new volunteer or worker in the nonprofit, and you go through a simulation of the losses that refugees suffer through during their journey. And that loss simulation game that we played over there was the basic structure that we used for the VR experience. I really was inspired by that to create that feeling of when you have to make many sacrifices during the journey, and that is directly taken from. So that is the base case of a co-creation, is like where we inspire each other, and that coming from two very different perspectives, two very different worlds, it makes new ideas fresh new idea spark, which I would never had those ideas just coming from my VR perspective.
But these are pros, yeah. This is positive aspect of co-creation. But like you mentioned before, that there could be some cons. And when we are talking before about this topic, collaboration, you mentioned about MIT report, and I read it, and it's really, really cool. It's called Collective Wisdom, and we read in abstract the following. So let me quote one thing. While the concept of co-creation is gaining prominence, it is an ancient and under-documented dynamic. Media co-creation has particular relevance in the face of today's myriad of challenges, but it's not without risks and complications. What could go wrong here? And how can we, for example, protect each other, ourselves from, the total disaster? Because we invest our time, our power,
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the project and the situation. My feeling is that co-creation can be complicated when the different creative entities come from the similar background or have similar skills. So those approaches can quickly become in conflict versus having creative entities that have completely different skill sets, completely different approaches, and then can really, like I say, inspire each other and create this like echo chamber of really cool ideas. So that is my personal experience of like every time I work with co-creators that are just completely have completely different life experience or completely different skills, it tends to work really well. But I don't know. I mean, this report is actually very helpful in like how to put things in place that will try to help the co-creation from and prevent it from falling apart. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to just read that report.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you never know when you start. You never know if it's gonna work or if it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah, that was I was gonna ask you. Is there any key, your key, to choose your partners and to know after all that experience of collaborations, many collaboration at your account, to choose right?
Sorry, no, I don't. I keep making mistakes, so you just have to make mistakes and learn from them, I guess.
It's the best. It's the best idea. I'm really feeling that the Sunlight is challenging us as viewers with a very specific question: who would you do, and what would you do in the face of the great violence against our closest one? And I'm wondering how the audience reacted on this film. Do you know something about? Did you get any feedback from people?
Yeah, well, so it's funny. Like a lot of people felt very empowered by the experience, men and women. It was actually interesting to see a lot of people crying at the end, but with a smile on their face. Of just being like, wow, those women are so brave, they're so beautiful, they're so incredible. And it's just like suddenly having this thing in their eye that tells you they didn't know about those women, but now they do, and now they will be part of their life. So it's like those. I always say we should never like pity those women. We should never feel bad for them, because they are the inspiring ones. They are the role models that we need in our lives. And seeing especially young girls or teenagers watching The Sand Lady makes me very hopeful, because I know that they will remember them, and suddenly they have. It's just, breaking that stereotype of women being the victims, right? And so when you suddenly flip the script and you see those empowered badasses women that, yes, horrible thing happened to her, but horrible thing happened to them, but they decided not to let it not to let it affect them. And by fighting back, they not only heal so much faster, but they also really change how the community sees them, and they become a role model for the next generation. For the Sun Ladies, when we went to a festival in the first year of the release, we had a table with paper and pen, and we told the audiences that if they wanted, they could leave a message, and we would return the messages back to Iraq. And that actually has been really successful. We gathered something like 5,000 letters, and we translated. We did like a Kickstarter campaign, raised some money to translate them to Kurd, and then I returned back to Iraq last year to return those letters. And so the Sun Ladies were super emotional. First of all, seeing their movie. Because usually when you're in a war zone, you see a lot of journalists and they film you, they ask you questions, and then you never see them again. So to see somebody come back, show the film, and bring all those letters was incredibly touching for them. And they didn't realize that the world cared about them and was impressed by them.
Yeah, it's strong. And when you mentioned about those tears, in the audience, after watching your film, I thought that you put on one hand, you put a lot of emotions. We talked about it into your work, into your films, but the thing you want to get from it, the greatest, win from it for you, maybe I'm wrong, tell me, is emotions too, from the audience. Is it something you're, fighting for? Is it the main goal of the films you are making?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want people to cry every time, but I want people to feel. Yeah, for sure. Like the reason why I was reading books as a little girl and I was passionate about movies and storytelling is that on many different levels, I learned and became the adult I am today as much from stories than from the real world, from going to school or, seeing people around me. And the stories for me felt just as real as the real world. And so as long as it creates this like deep emotional a bubble, it doesn't have to be sadness. It can be laughing, it could be feeling empowered or feeling depressed or whatever. It's like those emotions, it makes you feel alive. Mm-hmm. It's when you feel those emotions that you feel embodied in this reality. And so, yes, when I do present my work to the audiences, I want to offer that to them. I want them to feel alive through the emotion that they feel.
Different projects, different emotions. Yeah, we were talking about collaboration, and I was thinking about Filmteractive Festival, because Filmteractive Festival is all about collaboration between creative sector and artists and the business, for example. And when I thought about it, I thought about financial issues. And in this case with the Sun Ladies, when you were waiting for 6 months for funds, and how big of a challenge is this, greater than in, normal, not virtual reality movies? How business can support such artists like you? Something more than money.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a difficult niche medium where it's actually really hard to find any kind of funding for artistic projects. VR is like, there is the enterprise side of the spectrum where you can have VCs or startups and raising money. When it comes to using it for storytelling or documentaries or art, it's obviously way more challenging. It's been actually no project is the same. Like Sun Ladies, we had close to zero money. The Key was financed by Oculus for their VR for Good program. And for a new project I'm working on, it's coming from the French government, the CNC. Europe actually has a lot of grants and that you can apply to with XR projects. In America, unfortunately, it's way more challenging. So we don't really have a good streamlined way of sustaining yourself in that field, and it's all about finding the balance between commercial projects, branded content, etc., and more artistic personal projects.
Okay. Your works are about people and society, and I read one great thing written by Chris Milk. He referred to virtual reality as an empathy machine. And I'm wondering, and I want to ask you, is this an expression that you would also use, or not exactly?
Unfortunately, this was an expression that was overused over the year. So Chris Milk is an incredible artist and creator, and he was one of the very first one to really truly understand the potential of the VR medium. But here's the problem. Like, the trap is that it felt like just because you're doing a VR experience, you would de facto create empathy, and that's not the case. It's like VR is like any other medium, like writing a book or making a movie or making a video game or a podcast. You are not given automatic empathy from your audience. You need to create a safe space for it, and you need to. It's like you're the gardener, right? And you're planting seeds. And every day you come and you water your seeds, and you're hoping that there is enough sun and that the soil is good. Yeah, and you're just doing whatever you can for this beautiful seed to blossom into gorgeous flowers.
To grow.
But it's out of your hands. You're doing everything you can, but maybe the seed is not good, or maybe the soil is not good enough. Maybe there's not enough sun. So empathy is like a beautiful flower, and it can grow or it can not grow, but you can try to do everything you can, but at the end of the day, it also depends on your audience, on your story, and how much of a good use of the medium you're doing as an artist.
All right. What would be the next way for you for telling your stories? Games?
Absolutely. Yeah, so in the process of doing different things, because I get bored easily, so I change and I do lots of crazy things all the time. So I'm actually working on 2 feature films. I really would love to make a movie at some point. I was set to be a film director. I did a film school. I don't know why I haven't done a movie yet, because it's incredibly difficult. But yeah, I've got 2 feature films I'm working on. I have a new VR experience that I'm really excited about. That is the continuation of my work on the Sun Ladies, and it's called Fight Back. So it's about women all around the world becoming embodied in their physical self and learning martial arts, learning how to fight. This is actually a feature documentary and a VR experience, like transmedia approach, and also my first video game that I know nothing about making video game, but I'm a gamer and I have a project I'm really passionate about. So yeah, I'm just trying to do different things. And yeah, all those projects all have a little piece of me and have this kind of like focus on the emotional approach that I value and I like. So, but we'll see. I have no idea if any of those projects will actually happen. We'll see. Hopefully one.
Okay. When this one project, specifically this one you mentioned about, will be live, when can we expect it?
The VR project, you mean? Yeah. Well, we're really hoping this is a co-production between United States and France, and we're in the process of raising money for it. So hopefully, I would love, because I like to work fast. I don't like when project goes on for years. So ideally we would have finished raising money by beginning of next year, and I would love to premiere the project at the end of next year, or maybe the very beginning of 2022. So cross fingers.
Yeah. Mine are already crossed. But again, look at it. Again, there is a topic about fundraising, and it's really, really important. Any tips from you to young creators that are starting their journey with, for example, virtual reality, and they are looking for the help, for example, from the business?
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, look, my first very successful VR project was the Sun Ladies, right? Which we did for almost no money. Nobody was paid or barely paid, and it was just like this thing that we were just so passionate about that everybody on the crew did their best, despite not getting a fair salary for it, which is not something anybody should do. But here's the beauty of VR: is anybody with a computer or small VR cameras that now are actually pretty cheap can go and do something, right? And so sometimes I often say my students that they have everything they need to go and create a full VR experience. Either they learn how to use a game engine such as Unity or Unreal. There's tons of tutorials on YouTube. There's great books about it. So you can learn and you can do something. So it doesn't mean you need to become an expert programmer or a genius coder, and it doesn't mean you need to be Steven Spielberg to, you know, film a VR experience. But if you know the limits of your skills and you optimize for it and you focus on very good story and try not to make it too complicated on the technical side, just keep it simple and make it emotional, make it a good story. I've seen those experiences go all the way to big festival. You know, there is room for new artists, there's room for new voices, as long as you don't get sidetracked into super complicated stuff.
Yeah.
So if you keep it simple, you can actually learn a lot of things by doing it yourself. Now, it doesn't answer the question of how you sustain yourself. How do you pay rent? How do you, pay the bill? For me, it's been working as a technician on the side, right? I'm a DP, I'm a cinematographer, I'm an engineer in 3D cameras. So for many years, I've worked as a technician on movies like Transformers. I worked in the camera crew of Westworld. I had zero creative input in any of those projects, but those projects allowed me to pay my bill and sustain my living, so I could continue to learn my skill as a creator. So it's always good to not put all your eggs in the same basket, right? Of like, find something that you are good at and you can, sustain your living, and never stop trying to learn new skills and new ways of telling your stories.
Yeah, and remember that the story is the most important one here. Yeah, if you don't have a great story, nothing else matters, really.
And the story doesn't have a super complicated, doesn't have to be crazy complicated 3-act structure with it can be just a super, super simple fairy tale or something it's just like one paragraph that is just beautiful and emotional, and you can make it into a gorgeous VR experience.
And people do like stories, yeah. We like to listen to stories, and if they are good, we are remembering them and we are, thinking about them. Last question about your favorite go-to camera.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a hard question because there's so many of them, but at the same time, unfortunately, there hasn't been any new cameras for a little while. Yeah, it's been at least 1 year that really a new VR camera has been released. The research and development on that front has been kind of stopped. So my go-to cameras are the Yi Halo, which is a camera using optical flow to do 3D, 360, all the way up to 8K and final stitch. For that, you have to use workflow such as Mystica, for example, to stitch everything together. Then there is also the Titan, which is another camera that also comes with their own software to stitch a camera, which is also good. So yeah, I mean, if I had to shoot tomorrow, it would probably be either the Yi Halo or the Titan, depending on if I want a big camera or a smaller camera for drone shots, for example, things like that.
Cool. Thank you.
But that being said, I think it's really interesting to look at other way of filming. So, for example, using volumetric capture, or a tool that's actually really affordable and amazing called DevKit. That you just use a small DSLR camera and the Kinect sensor or the Azure sensor so you film in normal 2D, but you also get this depth information from the sensor, and then you can put in a game engine, and it unlocks tons and tons of opportunities. Again, that you really don't need a lot of money to do something really powerful with that medium.
You know what I see now, right now, at the end of our conversation, our interview, that was the topic we should talk about, because, you right now are totally different than at the beginning. When I ask you about those cameras, you're, alive much more than at the beginning.
Well, it's just because that's, my background is a camera person.
Yeah.
But it's not that interesting and important, in a sense that whatever is the story is the most important, and then finding the right tools. I mean, tons of people can help you find the right tools, your cinematographer or your local rental house or your VR expert or whoever can come and look at the store and say, hey, I think this is the best tool for it. There is not a single tool that will fit all stories. So this is story first, emotions, characters, and then we'll find whatever medium and whatever tools are the best to tell that specific story. Perfect
recipe for a perfect story from Celine Tricart. Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting interview from my perspective too. And it was a privilege to talk with you. So thank you so much.
And for whoever has access to an Oculus headset, the key is available for free on the Oculus store. So anybody can go and see it.
Yeah, and you should guys, definitely, because it's worth of seeing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.